Damon Fordham, adjunct professor of history at Charleston Southern University in the Citadel. And tonight I want to talk to you about something that's been occurring a lot in the news lately and, well, kind of generally. And a lot of time now, as I'm speaking, I'm not going to get into the names because I figure that people are going to watch this years from now, long after people forget about this incident. But we have this case where you have these celebrities going on, making these wild threats against each other, and so one rapper is going against this comedian, and another comedian is joined in, and so this rapper is also going against this other comedian, and it's just getting a little bit crazy. Now, I would like to hopefully think that this kind of thing is a publicity stunt, but I want you to take the following story into consideration. 1969 or 1970. I was 5 or 6 years old. It was a Halloween night, and I was too young to go out trick-or-treating, so I was at home while my dad was there giving out the Halloween candy. So while Dad's doing all of this, the bell rings, and a group of teenagers turns out to be at the door. So the teenagers are going, "Trick-or-treat, Mr. Fordham, trick-or-treat," and my dad said, "Look here. Y'all too grown for this kind of stuff. Stop this foolishness." Well, they laughed about it, and Dad went ahead to give them the candy anyway, but something about that stuck in my mind to this day. And there's another story I want to deal with on the same lines. 13 or so years after this, when I was in high school, I got in a fight. Yeah, and I couldn't fight my way out of a paper bag, to be honest with you, in those days. And needless to say, I got my gluteus kicked in the maximus. So this became a sort of joke around the neighborhood after a while, and then one of my cousins came up to me one night and slammed me against the wall and said, "Look here, if I ever hear about you doing this again, I'm going to hurt you even further than this other guy did." And I said, "Well, who are you to tell me what to do? You use dope and you ruin your life." And he said, and he slammed me up against the wall and said, "I'm exactly who to tell you what to do." And years later, I came to see that he was basically saying that since he had messed his life up, I had potential, and he didn't want to see me make the same mistakes he did because he wanted a better future than what he experienced. So what's the point of these two stories? Number one, the one about the Halloween incident, goes to, put it in my mind at an early age that there comes a time when you just get too grown to do things. And that some things you need to leave back into the playground or the kindergarten or wherever. And that as an adult, you just don't do certain things, and you are supposed to set an example. And even if you're an adult who's messed up your life, you could still use your life as an example for young people of not to where to go. So what does all that have to do with now? You have a lot of young people today, in the last few generations, that didn't grow up like those of us who had that strong community of elders who showed us right from wrong, even if they weren't our parents. They stepped in and they told us that we were not doing the right thing because as a collective community, they wanted us to succeed and do better than they did. And so I'm saying all this because since a lot of these young people didn't grow up with that, you have a lot of adults now who didn't grow up with that. So they honestly don't know that as entertainers nowadays, they often have more influence on young people than did their parents of these young people who follow them. Because a lot of times these young people grew up with parents who weren't exactly all that straight, and they didn't grow up with the community structure that was once common. I'm not saying it was perfect when I was a kid. Don't get it twisted there. It wasn't. But at least we had this firm idea of right versus wrong. So I'm saying this to tell you this. If you are a celebrity or an entertainer, know that young people are watching you whether you know it or not. And you have a responsibility in that these young people who are looking up to you, you have to set an example for them. Now, granted, I know you're going to do your thing behind closed doors. We all do that. But still, when you're out in the public, you have to remember these things. And I know you're going to make mistakes, but still, keep in mind, you should want better for the next generation, And if you've made mistakes, make sure the young people are to understand that they're there to learn from whatever makes mistakes that you've made. So if you're doing all these public arguments and all that for the sake of publicity, well, that's one thing. Hopefully, people will understand that that's what it's for. But if you're serious about it, please, if you're going to fight, do it behind closed doors and not on social media or out where people can see you do all of that. And Malcolm X said it best back in 1963. If you can't make it at home, you settle it at home. This is Damon Fordham.